You don't get to take that from my mom. Not here. Now picture this. An 11-year-old boy standing at a coastal ferry checkpoint, gripping a medical radio in his small hands, staring down a port security guard who suddenly looks unsure. The line goes silent. You can hear the ocean and everyone's heartbeat. But to understand why that moment at the checkpoint felt so heavy, we need to go back. A few hours earlier, Maya Collins was walking out of a hospital that never really sleeps. Maya wasn't just a nurse. She was the charge nurse in a busy ER, one of those people who holds the whole room together when everything is falling apart. The kind who can read a monitor in half a second, calm down a panicked family, and still find a way to crack a gentle joke for a scared kid. And that morning, she had done all of it, on almost no sleep. Her shift had run long. Not, I stayed an extra 15 minutes long. I'm talking 12 hours that turned into 14, because emergencies don't check the clock before they show up. Her eyes were burning. Her shoulders felt like someone had stacked bricks on them. The coffee didn't even taste like coffee anymore, just survival. But even exhausted, Maya still moved like she had a job to do. Because she did. She had a battered, overstuffed medical bag slung over her shoulder, no fancy logo, no special badge that screams important. Just a bag that said, in the most unglamorous way possible, if something happens, I'm ready. Next to her was Ethan Collins, her son, 11 years old. Quiet in that observant way, the kind of kid who notices things adults miss, because adults are busy pretending everything is fine. Ethan watched his mom the way kids watch the weather. He could tell when she was pushing through, when her smile was real, and when it was something she put on because she didn't want anyone to worry. "Ma, are you okay?" he'd asked earlier in the car. And Maya had done what she always did. She gave him that tired little smile and said, "I'm fine, baby. We're good." Because Maya was a keep-it-moving kind of woman, not weak, not passive, just practical. She'd learned the hard way that making a scene doesn't always end with justice. Sometimes it ends with you being labeled the problem. Sometimes it ends with you losing time you don't have. Sometimes it ends with your kid seeing you get dragged into something ugly when all you wanted was to get home. So Maya's default was peace, even when peace cost her. That day they weren't headed home. They were headed to the coast, one of those California harbor towns where the air smells like salt and sunscreen and fried food from a stand that's been there forever. The kind of place that looks calm from far away, even though everyone is rushing up close. Maya had promised Ethan a quick trip across to the island, not some luxury vacation, not some influencer getaway. They were going to check on family. And Maya had also agreed to help cover a community health visit on the island. Basic stuff, a wellness check. A patient who'd been discharged recently. A little bit of follow-up care that keeps small problems from turning into disasters. The plan was simple. Park, walk to the ferry terminal, scan their passes, get on the boat. Normal. Boring, even. And that's what makes what happens next so disturbing. Because the trouble didn't start with screaming. It didn't start with a fight. It started in a place that's technically public, but doesn't feel public when you're standing there. The ferry terminal, the checkpoint, the little rope lines, the signs, the uniforms, the rules posted in big letters, as if rules alone can keep people safe. You know that feeling, right? When you step into a space where everything is controlled, where one person behind a counter can wave you through, or decide you're going to have a problem today. It's not a courtroom, it's not a police station, but in that moment, it can feel like your entire day depends on someone else's mood. Maya and Ethan joined the line with everyone else, tourists with coolers, couples holding hands, families trying to keep toddlers from sprinting toward the water. Ethan kept glancing at his mom. Her posture was straight, but her face looked thin, like the exhaustion wasn't just in her body, it was in her bones. She adjusted the strap on her medical bag, shifting the weight like she'd done it 1,000 times. She rubbed her thumb against the edge of her ferry pass without realizing it. Little signs. Ethan saw all of them. And he also saw something else. His mom's habit. Whenever there was friction, someone rude at a store, a teacher who talked down, a stranger who got too comfortable with disrespect, Maya didn't explode. She got quiet. She went polite. She made herself smaller, not because she believed she was small, but because she believed it was safer to get through the moment and deal with the feelings later. Ethan didn't always understand that. To him, unfair was unfair, period. But Maya lived in the real world. She knew there are places where technically right doesn't protect you. Places where pushing back can turn a minor inconvenience into a full-blown ordeal. And a checkpoint is one of those places. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Rules aren't the villain. Rules can protect people. They can keep lines moving. They can stop real threats. But rules are also a tool, and a tool depends on the hands that hold it. In a healthy system, rules are applied evenly, quietly, fairly. But in a twisted system, rules become a costume. A way to dress up a personal bias as just procedure. And when that happens, the danger isn't the rule itself. The danger is that nobody feels allowed to ask the obvious question. Why is this rule only being used on that person? Because the moment you ask that, you're not just questioning a policy, you're questioning power. And power hates being questioned in public. So most people do what feels safest. They look forward. They stay quiet. They tell themselves, "It's not my business." But the scariest moment in any public space isn't when someone breaks the rules. It's when something feels wrong, and nobody dares to ask, wrong for who? And right now, back at that ferry terminal, the line was moving the way lines are supposed to move, slow but steady. Scan, beep, step through. Scan, beep, step through. A couple in flip-flops flashed their passes and laughed about seasickness. A dad wrestled a stroller over the curb. A teenager in a hoodie didn't even look up from his phone as he walked past the checkpoint like it was nothing. And Maya? Maya did everything right. She had her digital boarding pass ready, ID tucked behind it, bag zipped, shoulders square, face polite. The exact posture people adopt when they don't want trouble. But the moment she reached the front, the rhythm broke. "Hold up." The voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It had that clipped, official tone that says, "I can stop you whenever I want." The woman in the uniform stepped forward, Karen Doyle, port security. Mid-40s, hair pulled tight, badge sitting like a small crown on her chest. She didn't smile. She didn't greet Maya the way she greeted the couple before her. She just stared at the pass, then at Maya, then back at the pass. "Your pass. Let me see it again." Maya blinked once like she didn't hear correctly, because she had just shown it. But she handed it over anyway, calm, respectful. The way she'd trained herself to be. Karen took it and held it longer than necessary. Not a quick glance, not a routine check. She studied it like it was counterfeit. Then she tilted her head. "And your ID?" Maya's eyes flicked to the growing line behind her. She could feel the shift, the impatience, the silent question, what's taking so long? Still, she didn't sigh. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't push back. She handed over her ID. Karen compared the two slowly, painfully slowly, like she wanted time to stretch, like she wanted the moment to feel uncomfortable. Ethan watched from Maya's side, quiet as a shadow, and he noticed something right away. Karen wasn't checking the pass the way she checked everyone else's. She wasn't even looking at the screen half the time. She was looking at his mom. Not the normal glance people do, not "have a nice day." This was different. This was a look that searched for weakness. A look that said, "Slip up, give me a reason." Karen handed the ID back, but not the pass. Instead, she asked a question that made no sense. "Where are you heading?" Maya hesitated. "The island ferry?" Karen's mouth tightened. "Purpose of travel?" Now, if you've ever been in one of these moments, you know exactly what it feels like. Because the questions aren't really about information, they're about control. Maya answered anyway. "To visit family, and I'm helping with a community health check." Karen's eyes dropped to the medical bag on Maya's shoulder, and something in her expression sharpened, like she'd found the thread she wanted to pull. "What's in the bag?" Maya kept her voice even. "Medical supplies. I work in an ER." Karen didn't say thank you. She didn't say okay. She didn't say anything that sounded like respect. She just nodded, like she'd heard a claim she didn't believe. Then she said the magic word. "Random screening." Random. That word is supposed to comfort you. It's supposed to mean fair, equal, not personal. But Ethan looked around, and his stomach dropped. Because nothing about this felt random. Karen wasn't stopping the teenager with the big backpack who'd walked through 2 seconds ago. She wasn't pulling aside the guy with the duffel bag big enough to hide a small dog. She wasn't questioning the couple with the cooler. No, she was stopping the tired woman with the medical bag. And it was so subtle, most people could pretend they didn't see it. That's how it starts. Not with an insult, not with a slur, with procedure. Karen stepped to the side and jerked her chin toward a small inspection table. "Over here." Maya did what most exhausted, decent people do in that situation. She went along with it, because she wanted to get it over with, because she wanted to avoid escalating, because she had a kid beside her and a job to do on the other end of that boat. She shifted the bag onto the table, unzipped it halfway, and waited. Karen slipped on gloves like she was about to handle something dangerous. Then she began the inspection. Slow, deliberate, almost theatrical. She lifted a pack of gauze, turned it over, put it down. She picked up a flashlight, examined it like it was suspicious. She tapped the inside lining of the bag with 2 fingers. And the whole time, her eyes kept sliding back to Maya's face, watching, measuring, waiting for Maya to get flustered, waiting for her to raise her voice, waiting for her to become the stereotype Karen wanted her to become. Behind them, the line started to bunch. A man 2 people back muttered, "Come on." Someone else sighed louder than necessary. But when Maya turned her head slightly, just enough to see if anyone was going to say, "Hey, why is she being held up?" people suddenly found the floor very interesting. They looked away. They adjusted their bags. They checked their watches. Because nobody wanted to be next. And Ethan? Ethan could feel anger rising in his chest, hot and sharp. Not because of the bag, because of the pattern. Because Karen wasn't doing this to keep people safe. She was doing it to make his mom feel watched, small, out of place. And here's the part that matters, the part the world loves to ignore. Rules have 2 faces. One face protects order. The other face can legalize bias. A rule applied evenly is safety. A rule applied selectively is a weapon. and Karen was holding that weapon like she knew exactly how to use it. Maya kept her voice gentle. "Is there anything specific you're looking for?" Karen didn't answer the question. She answered with another command. "Step back." Not please, not ma'am, just step back. Maya obeyed, because again, she was trying to keep the peace. But Ethan saw what that step really was. It wasn't about space. It was about power. Karen finally set the bag down and handed the pass back as if she was doing Maya a favor. "All right, you can go. For now. For now." 2 words that landed like a warning. And as Maya lifted the bag back onto her shoulder, Ethan looked up at his mom's face. She was still calm, but her eyes had that look, tight around the edges. The look of someone swallowing something bitter because she's learned that dignity sometimes gets punished in public spaces. And Ethan realized something terrifying. This wasn't the end. This was the first test. Karen had just asked a simple question. Will she push back? Will anyone say anything? And when the answer came back, silence. Karen didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to get dramatic, because she'd just been given permission to go further. And Karen took that silence like a signature, because once you realize nobody is going to challenge you, you stop pretending you're being fair. Maya and Ethan stepped away from the inspection table and moved toward the waiting area, the one marked with bright signs and painted lines on the ground. It looked like a normal little corral. Metal benches, a snack cart, families shifting their bags, tourists squinting at the departure board. It should have felt like relief, but Maya didn't exhale. She could feel it in the air the way you feel a storm before the first drop hits. That sensation that you're being followed, without anyone ever taking a single step. Karen didn't stay behind the counter. She followed. Not right on their heels, not enough for anyone to call it harassment. Just close enough that Maya could hear her boots on the concrete. And the first nitpick came fast. "Ma'am, your bag." Maya turned. Karen pointed at the medical bag on Maya's shoulder like it was an offense. "That can't be worn like that in the checkpoint zone. Put it on the ground." Maya blinked. "I'm not in the checkpoint lane anymore." Karen didn't care. Policy. Bag goes down. Now here's the thing. 2 feet away, a man had a huge backpack strapped to his chest, literally bouncing against him as he walked. Nobody stopped him. A woman had a tote hanging off her elbow, swinging into people as she turned. Nobody stopped her. But Maya? Maya quietly lowered her bag to the ground. Not because Karen was right. Because Maya was tired. Because Maya understood a truth most people learn the hard way. Arguing with someone who wants control only feeds them. So she did what nurses do when they're dealing with difficult people. She stayed polite. "Okay," she said softly. "I'll put it down." Karen watched her do it, expression blank, like she'd just proven a point. Maya sat on the end of a bench with Ethan beside her, shoulders a little hunched now, not from guilt, just from the weight of being watched. Ethan kept his eyes forward, but his body was tight. He could feel the unfairness crawling up his throat like something he wanted to spit out. And then Karen came back again. Second nitpick. "This area is for passengers boarding in the next 30 minutes. Maya glanced up at the board. Their ferry was scheduled soon. "We're boarding in 20. Karen's eyes slid over the board like she didn't even need to check. "Then you need to sit over there." She pointed, 2 benches down, closer to the edge, where the wind cut harder and there was less cover. Maya looked at the bench Karen pointed to. A couple was already sitting there, eating chips, sprawled out with their feet up on a bag. They weren't being moved. But Karen wasn't talking to them. She was talking to Maya. Maya swallowed. All right. She stood, lifted the bag, moved exactly where Karen directed, and sat again. And you could almost see the shift inside her, the internal math every decent person does in a moment like this. How much can I endure to keep this from getting worse? How much do I stay quiet to protect my son from a scene? How much of my pride am I willing to fold up and put in my pocket just to get on that boat? Ethan watched his mother do it, and something inside him started to change. Because at 11 years old, you still believe adults follow rules for a reason. And Ethan was starting to realize something scary. Some adults use rules as camouflage. Third nitpick. Maya rubbed her eyes, and for a second she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small pen light, one of those compact medical flashlights. The kind you use to check pupils. Nothing dramatic, nothing illegal. Just a tool. She clicked it on, not to shine it in anyone's face, but to look inside her bag and make sure everything was zipped properly. A tiny beam of light. 2 seconds. And Karen's voice sliced right through it. "Turn that off." Maya froze. "It's just a pen light." Karen stepped closer. "No lights in the waiting area. Turn it off. Now." Ethan looked around again. There was a teenager across the way using his phone flashlight to search under a bench for a dropped earbud. There was a woman taking selfies in direct sunlight, her screen glaring like a lighthouse. Nobody said a word to them. But the second Maya's small pen light clicked on, Karen acted like she'd pulled out a flare gun. Maya clicked it off immediately. Her hand shook, just slightly, and Karen stood there for one extra beat, like she wanted Maya to feel how small she could make her. Then she walked away. And now the people around them were definitely watching. Not openly, not bravely. Side glances, quick looks. The kind of attention you give a situation you don't want to be responsible for. You could feel the unspoken question traveling through the crowd. Why her? And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable, so they pretend it isn't real. You want to believe that when something wrong happens in public, someone will step in, that a stranger will say, "Hey, that's not okay," that justice just shows up. But in places like this, tight spaces, rules everywhere, authority uniforms, cameras on poles, most people don't act like heroes. They act like survivors. They think, if I say something, will I get kicked off the ferry? If I argue, will they flag my ticket? If I step in, will I become the problem? And then something even weirder happens. The more people who witness it, the safer everyone feels staying quiet. Because everyone is waiting for someone else to be the first one brave enough. And while they wait, the person being targeted stands alone. That's what Karen was counting on. Because the truth is, on a windy dock with security signs and no trespassing warnings, silence doesn't always mean agreement. Sometimes silence means fear. Sometimes silence means, "Please don't look at me next." Maya felt it too. She could feel the eyes, the judgment, the impatience. And she could feel her own exhaustion trying to drag her down into a quiet, desperate thought. Just get through it. Just get on the boat. Just don't make it worse. But Ethan wasn't thinking like that. Ethan was thinking, why is everybody watching my mom get pushed around like this? Why is nobody saying a word? And then Karen returned again, like a wave coming back for the shore. This time she didn't point at a bench. She pointed at the medical bag. "Open it." Maya stared. "You already checked it." Karen's smile was thin. "I need to check it again." Maya kept her voice low, controlled. Is there a reason? Karen leaned in a little, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. Because it's protocol. There it was again, that word, protocol. And Ethan watched his mom's face, still calm, still polite, but the muscles in her jaw tightened. Because Maya knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't safety. This was pressure. Small, constant, relentless pressure, like a thumb on your chest. Not enough to crush you all at once, but enough to make breathing feel like work. Maya reached for the zipper, and right as she did, Karen added something else, almost casually, almost like an afterthought. And don't use any devices in this area. No calls, no communications. Understood? Maya's hand paused. Ethan's heart thumped once, hard. Because now it wasn't just about being embarrassed. Now it was about being controlled. And if Maya opened that bag, Karen wasn't just going to look at bandages and gauze. She was going to look for the one thing she could take that would actually hurt. Before we see what Karen does next, before we see the exact moment this shifts from petty to dangerous, you need to understand something. People like Karen don't start with the big move. They start with little moves. They poke. They test. They watch who flinches. And once they realize you're trying to keep the peace, they stop treating you like a person. They start treating you like a target. And that's when Maya's world narrowed down to one simple, terrifying fact. Karen wasn't just nitpicking anymore. She was positioning herself to take something that mattered. Maya unzipped the medical bag slowly, careful, deliberate, like she was handling glass. Inside were the things that never looked dramatic to the outside world. Gauze, gloves, a blood pressure cuff, a stethoscope, sealed packets, a small trauma kit. The kind of tools that don't impress anyone until you need them. Karen leaned in, eyes scanning, not like she was worried about safety, more like she was hunting for leverage. Ethan sat frozen beside his mom, watching Karen's hands hover too close to the bag, watching the way Karen's face never softened, never once said, "I'm sorry, I have to do this." No compassion, just control. Maya kept her voice level. "Is there something specific you're looking for?" Karen didn't answer the question. She just pointed. "What's that?" Maya glanced. "That's my radio." And the moment she said it, Ethan saw the shift. Karen's eyes sharpened, because that was the first thing in that bag that wasn't just a tool. It was a connection, a lifeline. The device was small, sturdy, clipped inside a protective case. Not some flashy gadget, not a phone, not a toy. It was a medical communications unit, something Maya's ER used for coordinated outreach and consults when the coast clinics needed quick guidance. Because out here, on the water, cell service could be spotty, and seconds mattered. Maya reached toward it to adjust the clip, and the device buzzed, short, urgent. Not loud, not dramatic. But if you've worked healthcare long enough, you know the difference between a random notification and a call that means, "Get ready." Maya's tired eyes sharpened for the first time that morning. She pulled the device out and glanced at the screen. Ethan watched his mom's face change. The exhaustion was still there, but something else rose up under it. Professional focus. That calm, sharpened instinct people only get when they're used to emergencies. Maya thumbed the button and brought it close, not trying to hide it, not trying to make a scene, just doing her job. "Coastal ER Outreach, this is Maya Collins," she said quietly. "Go ahead." A voice crackled through, strained and rushed. "Maya, sorry to bother you. We've got a patient on the island. Post-procedure complications. She's dizzy, her pressure's dropping. We need guidance, now. Maya's posture straightened. She didn't panic. She didn't yell. She didn't dramatize it. She did what she always did. She started triaging with her words. Okay, tell me her age. What procedure did she have? Current vitals. Any bleeding? Any meds? She was halfway through the questions when Karen stepped in like a wall. Turn that off. Maya blinked, still listening. I'm receiving a medical consult. Karen's voice rose, sharp enough that a couple heads turned. No communications in the control area. That's policy. Maya lowered the device slightly, but didn't cut it. Ma'am, this is a medical line. Someone needs help. Karen held out her hand like she was collecting contraband. Hand it over. Now, if you've never been in a situation where someone tries to take the tool you need to do your job, you might not understand how violating it feels. Because this wasn't about a gadget. This was about Maya's identity. Maya wasn't just a woman standing at a dock waiting for a ferry. She was the person people reached for when they were scared. She was the person who answered when somebody said, "We don't know what to do." And Karen was trying to cut that lifeline in front of a crowd, like it meant nothing. Maya's voice stayed polite, but you could hear the steel beneath it. This device is for patient care, she said. I need it. Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. Then you should have thought about that before using it here. Maya stared at her. Thought about what? A patient needing help? The radio crackled again. Maya, we really need you. Maya turned her head just enough to speak into it. I'm here, 1 second. And that 1 second was all Karen needed. Karen stepped in closer, lowering her voice like she was being reasonable. You can't have that on in this area. Federal port standards. Hand it over so I can inspect it. Maya shook her head once, small, controlled. No, I'm not handing over a medical device during an active consult. Call your supervisor if you need clarification. And the moment Maya said supervisor, Karen's eyes flashed. Because there are two kinds of people when you mention oversight. People who are doing the right thing get calmer. People who are abusing power get angrier. Karen's voice snapped back up, loud enough to make the nearest line of passengers go quiet. Ma'am, if you refuse, I can deny you boarding. Ethan's stomach dropped. Deny you boarding? Those words weren't about rules. They were about punishment. Maya didn't plead. She didn't beg. She tried one last time to keep it clean, calm, undeniable. Listen, she said, voice steady. I'm a nurse. This is a medical consult. There's a patient on the island who could deteriorate. Let me finish this call. Then you can inspect whatever you need. Karen didn't flinch. She just held her hand out again. Hand it over. Now. And this is the moment that breaks people. Not because they're weak, but because there are only so many ways you can respond when someone with authority decides you're not a person anymore. You're a problem. Maya looked around. There were people watching. A man with sunglasses pretending he wasn't listening. A woman holding a coffee, eyes wide, lips pressed together like she wanted to disappear. A teenage couple frozen mid-laugh, suddenly unsure if they were allowed to breathe. So many witnesses, and still, no one spoke. Maya's thumb hovered over the device. On the other end of that radio was a nurse on the island, waiting for guidance. On this end was Karen Doyle, waiting for obedience. Maya made a choice that tasted like ash. She lowered the device into Karen's outstretched hand, not because Karen deserved it, but because Maya couldn't risk Karen escalating and cutting off everything. The instant the device touched Karen's palm, Karen's fingers closed around it like a trophy, like she'd finally gotten what she came for. Maya's voice stayed quiet. Please, I need that back immediately. Karen turned slightly, angling her body so Maya couldn't reach it even if she tried. This will be temporarily held for inspection, Karen said, loud and official. You can request it back after clearance. After clearance? Maya repeated, and for the first time her calm cracked just a little. There's an active medical call. Karen shrugged like the words meant nothing. Not my problem. And there it was, the cruelty underneath the policy. Maya's eyes reddened fast, not big sobs, not dramatic crying. Just that silent, exhausted burn you get when you realize you're powerless in a place where you should have been safe. Ethan stared at the device in Karen's hand, then at his mom's face. And something inside him hardened, because he finally understood the real stakes. Karen didn't just take a radio. She took Maya's ability to be who she is. And when you take the symbol of someone's calling, when you strip them of the thing that lets them help, protect, serve, you're not just taking property. You're taking dignity. You're taking purpose. You're telling them, right now, you don't get to be important. Maya swallowed hard and forced her voice back into that nurse-soft tone. Okay, she said, almost to herself. Okay, we'll handle it. But Ethan heard the truth under it. This wasn't handled. This was stolen. And the worst part? Karen did it in front of a crowd that let it happen. Now let me ask you something, because this is where most people realize they've been thinking about speaking up the wrong way. If you were standing there, watching this unfold, what would you say that actually helps? What would you say that's firm, smart, and safe, without giving Karen the excuse she's clearly looking for? Because right after this, everything changes. Let me pause the story right here, because this is the exact moment most people get the same sick feeling in their stomach. You're watching it happen. You know it's wrong. You can feel the unfairness crawling up your spine. And yet, you stay quiet. Not because you don't care, but because you're thinking the same thing everyone thinks in places like this. If I say something, will they turn on me next? Because in a controlled space, behind gates, badges, restricted areas, the rules are real, and the people enforcing them can make your life miserable with one sentence. Step aside, show me your ID. You're not boarding. So let me ask you a question, honestly. If you were standing in that line, hearing Maya say, "This is a medical device," and hearing Karen say, "Hand it over," what would you do? Would you shout? Would you curse? Would you step in physically? Most people think speaking up means going to war. But here's the hard truth. In moments like this, the loudest person is the easiest person to label as a problem. And the second they label you a problem, the whole situation flips. Now it's not about what Karen did, it's about what you did. That's why so many people freeze. That's why so many witnesses become furniture. So if you want to help and stay safe, you don't need to be aggressive. You need to be precise. You need to speak in a way that does two things at once: protect the victim and remove the bully's cover. And that cover is always the same: policy, protocol, standards. Okay, fine. Let's talk in their language. Here are 3 steps: short, clean, hard to twist. Step 1. Describe what you're seeing in neutral words, not accusations, observations. You don't start with, "You're profiling her," because that turns into a debate. You start with, "I'm witnessing repeated checks directed at this one person," or "I've seen her stopped multiple times while others are being waved through." Do you hear the difference? You're not attacking Karen's character. You're documenting Karen's behavior. and behavior is harder to argue with than motives. Step 2. Ask for the higher authority calmly, because bullies love private power. They hate oversight. So you say, "Can we get the shift supervisor to confirm this policy and how it's being applied?" Or, "I'm requesting a supervisor review before you hold medical equipment." That sentence is a door. It moves the situation out of Karen's personal control and into process. And process is where power abusers start to sweat. Because now it's not just Maya versus Karen. It's Maya, Karen, and the system watching. Step 3. Offer to be a witness, not a fighter, a witness. This is the part people skip, and it's the part that changes everything. You say, "I'm willing to give my name and statement if needed," or "I'm documenting this for transparency." And if you're recording, do it quietly. Don't shove a camera in someone's face. Don't narrate like you're filming a reality show. Just hold steady, capture facts. Because video doesn't argue. Video doesn't get intimidated. Video doesn't forget. And here's the beauty of this approach. You can do all 3 steps without raising your voice, without stepping into a restricted zone, without giving Karen the excuse she's looking for. You're not causing a disturbance. You're asking for clarity. You're requesting oversight. You're offering documentation. That is the language of adults. That is the language of accountability. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But what if they still punish me? What if they glare at you? What if they threaten to delay you? What if they snap? Mind your business. That's exactly why you keep it short and you keep it clean. You repeat the same line, calm as stone. I'm requesting a supervisor. I'm offering a witness statement. I'm documenting for transparency. No insults, no sarcasm, no ego. Because when you stay calm, you force the other person to show who they are. And if they explode while you're composed, they lose their mask in front of everyone. That's the irony of power trips. They depend on your emotional reaction. They want you loud so they can call you disorderly. They want you rude so they can call you disrespectful. They want you to flinch so they can call you guilty. But when you speak like a witness, all they have left is intimidation. And intimidation looks ugly in daylight. Now take that back to Maya's situation. Look at what Karen just did. She didn't inspect a random object. She took a medical communications device during an active consult. She did it publicly, and she did it with the calm confidence of someone who believed nobody would challenge her wording. Because as long as she says policy, she thinks she's untouchable. And as long as everyone stays silent, she's right. That's why this matters. Not because you need to be heroic, but because silence is the oxygen of petty tyranny. And right now, at that dock, Karen had plenty of oxygen. Maya's hands were empty. Her eyes were red. The radio that connected her to a patient in distress was sitting in Karen's grip like a prize, and the line behind them kept moving like nothing was happening. People looked away. People checked their phones. People pretended the sea breeze was suddenly fascinating, because everyone was waiting for someone else to go first. But here's what they didn't understand. This wasn't just a random inconvenience. This was the fuse. And the longer nobody spoke the right way, the bolder Karen became. Because when you can take a person's tools in public with no consequences, what do you think you'll try next? And that's exactly when Ethan stopped being a kid watching his mom keep the peace and became a kid who decided peace without dignity isn't peace at all. And that's when Ethan moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just certain. He stepped forward until the painted line on the concrete was right in front of his sneakers. The kind of line everyone understands without being told. Past this point, you're in the wrong. So he didn't cross it. He didn't give Karen the gift of a technicality. He just stood at the edge of it, shoulders squared, eyes up, like a kid who had finally realized something adults forget all the time. If you stay small long enough, people start believing you're supposed to be small. Maya didn't even notice at first. She was still staring at that radio in Karen's hand, like her brain couldn't accept the reality of it. Her lips parted, then closed. She swallowed. She looked exhausted and furious at the same time, but she kept her voice soft, because she knew exactly how quickly soft could be twisted into suspicious. Ethan noticed everything. He noticed the way Karen angled her body like a wall. He noticed the way two people in line suddenly became very interested in their phones. He noticed the way a man in a windbreaker looked up, looked away, then looked up again, like he wanted to help but didn't know how. And then Ethan did the thing nobody else was willing to do. He asked a clean question. Not a rant, not a speech, a question. He looked right at Karen and said, calm as a judge, "Can you explain why this rule is only being applied to my mom?" The air changed. You've seen it before. That moment when a bully realizes they're no longer bullying in private. Karen's eyes flicked just for a second toward the line behind Maya, like she was checking who was listening. And people were listening. Because questions like that don't just challenge a person, they challenge the story they're telling themselves. Karen straightened up, voice sharp. "Step back. You don't belong in this area." Ethan didn't move. "I'm not in your area," he said, glancing down at the line, then back up. "I'm right here. I'm asking a question." That's the part adults hate, by the way, when a kid stays polite and still refuses to be dismissed. Karen's face tightened. "This is protocol for safety." Ethan nodded once, like he accepted the concept of safety. Then he asked again, slower, so the whole line could hear it. "Okay, then why didn't you do the same checks on the people right in front of us?" There it was. The fuse finally reached the powder. Karen's jaw clenched. "You're delaying the line. If you keep interfering, you and your mother will not board this ferry." Maya's hand lifted slightly, like she wanted to pull him back, like instinct told her, "Don't make this worse. Keep your head down. Get through. Survive." But Ethan didn't look at her, not because he didn't love her, because if he looked at her, he might see her fear, and he might stop. Instead, he looked past Karen, to the booth window, to the posted signs, to the little camera mounted above the gate. And then he looked back at Karen and said, "My mom is a nurse. That device is for medical care." "You took it while she was responding to a patient. That's not safety. That's blocking care." A couple people in line shifted. Somebody whispered, "He's right." Karen's eyes flashed. "I said step back." Ethan didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult her. He didn't call her names. He did something far more dangerous to someone like Karen. He made her look unreasonable. He said, "If it's protocol, then call your supervisor to confirm it. Right now, in front of everyone." And you could feel the crowd wake up. Because in front of everyone is the one place petty power doesn't work. Petty power survives in corners, in silence, in confusion, in the fog of rules. But when you demand clarity out loud, the fog starts burning off. Karen's voice jumped up an octave. "I don't need to call anyone. I'm in charge of this checkpoint." That line, that single sentence, not "I'm following policy," not "I'm keeping people safe." "I'm in charge." And the moment she said it, you could almost hear people thinking, "Oh, so that's what this is." Maya's eyes were wet now, not because she was weak, but because she was trapped. She had no way to win this without being labeled difficult, and she knew it. She'd spent her whole adult life learning how to survive in systems that punished the wrong people for speaking up. But Ethan hadn't spent decades learning silence. He'd spent 11 years learning right from wrong. He took one slow breath and said, "Then write it down." Karen blinked. "What?" "Write down your name," he said. "Write down what you took and why. Put it in a report. Because if you can't document it, you shouldn't be doing it." Now Karen was looking around again, because she could feel the ground shifting under her feet. A teenager a few spots back lifted his phone, not even hiding it. A woman in a sun hat tilted her screen toward the scene. And one by one, that line became what Karen feared most: witnesses. Karen snapped, "Stop recording! This is a secure area!" And that only made more people lift their phones. Because nothing screams, "I'm doing the right thing," like demanding nobody sees what you're doing. Ethan pointed lightly, not aggressively, just enough to anchor reality. "You can tell them to stop," he said. "Or you can answer the question. Why is this rule only for my mom?" Karen stepped forward, like she was going to intimidate him with her body. Maya's voice finally cracked through, quiet but firm. "Ma'am, please don't step toward my child." Karen turned her head like a whip. "Then control your child." And Maya, tired, drained, trying to hold herself together, still chose the hardest thing. She stayed polite, because she knew if she gave Karen one loud moment, Karen would use it as proof she was dangerous. Ethan saw that too, and it did something to him. You know that look kids get sometimes, when innocence leaves their face for just a second? His voice didn't get louder, it got heavier. He said, "Return the device. Now. If someone on that island gets hurt because you wanted to feel powerful for 5 minutes, that's on you." That line landed like a rock in water, not because it was a threat, because it was a consequence. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at the phones. She glanced at the security camera. She glanced at the line of people who were no longer pretending. And right there, right in that moment, you understand something most adults never fully accept. The power of a child isn't in a big, scary threat. It's in the fact that a child will ask the question out loud, in front of witnesses, when adults are still negotiating with their fear. Karen tried one last time. "If you don't step away, I'm calling support. You will both be removed." Ethan nodded once, like he was giving her permission. "Call them," he said. "Please. Call your supervisor. Call whoever you need to call. But do it in front of everyone." And for the first time, Karen looked unsure. Not because Ethan was bigger than her, not because he was tougher than her, because he had dragged her behavior into the light. And once something is in the light, it can't pretend to be just protocol anymore. The line behind them had stopped moving completely now. People weren't just watching. They were ready. Ready to speak, ready to witness, ready to make sure this didn't get buried under the word policy. And Karen could feel it. She still had the device in her hand, but she no longer had the room's silence. And that's when she reached for her radio. Because when a bully loses the crowd, the only thing left is authority. So she called for backup. And the moment those words left her mouth, Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't gloat. He just stood there on that line, steady as a lighthouse, while the whole dock held its breath. Because now the question was bigger than Maya, bigger than Ethan. It was a question aimed at the entire system. Was this really about rules? Or was it about who you think deserves respect? And the second Karen called for support, you could feel the whole dock lean in. Because up until now, this had been one woman with a badge and a tired nurse trying not to get labeled as difficult. It was messy. It was emotional. It was the kind of situation petty power loves because it stays in the gray. But the moment witnesses lock in, the gray disappears. Off to the side, Daniel Brooks had already positioned himself the way a professional does. Not in anyone's face, not shouting, just steady. Phone held chest high, frame wide, audio clear. He wasn't filming for drama, he was filming for record. And that matters, because a mouth can be dismissed, a video can't. Daniel's voice stayed calm as he spoke into his live stream, almost like he was reading a report. Time, location, checkpoint. We have a medical communications device being held by port security. The child is asking for an explanation. The officer is refusing to document. He didn't insult Karen. He didn't throw labels like grenades. He did something more powerful. He made it official. A few feet behind Maya, Helen Moore, sun-weathered, practical, the kind of older woman who's seen every kind of person come through a harbor, stopped pretending she was just waiting her turn. She'd been watching the pattern, the repeated stops, the selective rules, the way Karen kept circling back like Maya was the problem that needed correcting. Helen pulled out an old flip phone like it had lived through 1,000 storms, hit one number, and put it to her ear. "Hey," she said, not loud, but loud enough. "Mark, it's Helen. I'm at the checkpoint. You need to come down here, right now." Pause. "No, it's not a fight," she added, eyes never leaving Karen. "It's targeting. Repeated targeting. And there are phones up." When Helen said that last part, "there are phones up," you could almost see Karen's confidence wobble. Because the truth is, in closed spaces like this, justice doesn't happen because someone deserves it. It happens when 4 things line up. The thing that got taken, the witnesses who saw it, the authority who can override it, and the consequence that makes it stick. Right now, Maya had the first one, and thanks to Daniel and the line of people quietly recording, she had the second. Karen still tried to hold the room with her voice. "Everyone needs to step back. This is an active security matter." But her words didn't land the same anymore, because nobody was arguing with her. They were documenting her. Maya stood there, hands tight on her bag strap, cheeks flushed, eyes wet but steady. Ethan stayed on that painted line like it was sacred ground. And then the crowd parted, because someone with real authority doesn't push through like a bully. He arrives, and the space makes room. Mark Reynolds walked in with a clipped stride and a face that didn't do drama. Mid-40s, port uniform, supervisor radio on his shoulder, eyes scanning the scene the way a firefighter scans smoke. He didn't start by yelling. He started by looking. "Who's the device belong to?" he asked. Maya raised her hand slightly. "Me, I'm a nurse. It's for medical communication." Mark nodded once, then turned to Karen. "Why are you holding it?" Karen lifted her chin. "Protocol. She was using it in a restricted area." Mark didn't react emotionally. He asked the kind of questions that leave no hiding place. "Is that restriction posted?" Karen hesitated. "It's standard." "Is it being applied to everyone in this line?" Karen's eyes flicked to the side. "Do you have a written report started?" Mark continued. "Badge number recorded? Reason for temporary hold documented?" Karen's mouth opened. No sound came out. Mark held out his hand. "Let me see the footage." Daniel didn't gloat. He simply stepped forward and showed him the clip. Timestamps, the repeated stops, the refusal to document, the moment Karen said, "I'm in charge." Mark watched in silence, the kind of silence that makes people nervous. Then he looked up, right at Karen. "Step away from the checkpoint." Karen stiffened. Excuse me? You're relieved, Mark said, voice flat. Effective immediately. Hand me the device. Another officer will take over. Karen's face drained. You can't. I can, Mark cut in. And I just did. He took the device, turned to Maya, and his tone softened, not into pity, but into respect. Ma'am, he said, you're getting it back, and we're going to do this the right way. Karen stood there like she'd been unplugged. 5 minutes ago, she was untouchable. She had the badge, the checkpoint, the line of strangers who didn't want trouble. Now she was just a person caught on camera, with a supervisor watching her blink through excuses. Mark didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He turned slightly, keeping his body between Karen and Maya, and spoke into his radio. I need Officer Lane at this checkpoint, now, and get me the incident log tablet. Karen tried to regain ground. Mark, you're overreacting. She broke protocol. I was doing my job. Mark gave her a look that said, You're still talking like this is private. It's not overreacting when there's a medical device involved, he said. And it's not protocol if you can't cite it. But that's when the situation stopped being just one ugly moment and turned into something bigger. Because Daniel Brooks wasn't only filming. While Mark was reviewing the clip, Daniel did what journalists always do when something feels familiar. He checked the name. Quietly, quickly, thumb moving like muscle memory. He opened a local database, then a public records portal, then an old thread from a community board that most people scroll past. And suddenly his face changed. Not shocked, not excited, just confirmed. He stepped closer, careful not to escalate, and held his phone low so only Mark could see. Mark, Daniel said, voice calm. I think you should know this. Mark glanced down, and there it was. Karen Doyle. Previous complaint, different port, same pattern. Selective checks, unprofessional conduct, escalated without cause, not proven in court. Not a headline, but enough to turn this from a bad day into a system risk. Mark's jaw tightened. He looked up at Karen again, and this time he wasn't handling a scene. He was handling a liability. Karen, he said, slow and clear, so everyone could hear without it becoming a spectacle. You're done for today. Turn in your access tag. Right now. Karen scoffed, but it came out shaky. This is ridiculous. Mark didn't flinch. It's documented, and we're not waiting until it becomes a lawsuit or a tragedy. He turned to the growing crowd, people still holding tickets, still pretending they weren't watching, and his tone shifted into pure procedure. I need 2 witness statements, he said. Names and contact info. If you recorded, keep that footage. Do not edit it. We'll request it formally. Then he turned to Maya, and for the first time, the power in the space moved toward her. Maya could have asked for special treatment. She could have demanded a fast pass, a private escort, a shortcut. But she didn't. Because people like Maya aren't built that way. She swallowed, blinking back the heat in her eyes, and said the sentence everyone watching needed to hear. I don't need to be favored, she said. I just need to be treated like everyone else. No drama, no speech, just a boundary. And that boundary landed harder than any insult ever could. Ethan looked up at her like he was seeing a different version of his mom. Same tired eyes, same shaking hands, but a spine that didn't bend just to keep the peace. Because standing up like that isn't about winning. Most of the time, it's not even about the other person. It's about the quiet war inside you, the one that starts when you keep swallowing disrespect until it feels normal. Maya didn't stand tall to defeat Karen. She stood tall so she wouldn't betray herself. And in that moment, right there by the sound of the water and the stares of strangers, Ethan learned something no school teaches. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to fight. It's to refuse to shrink. Now, if you're watching this and thinking, okay, Ethan went hard, you're not wrong. Because when an 11-year-old looks a grown adult in the face and draws a line in the sand, it hits different. It feels like a movie moment. But let's be honest about what made that moment feel so satisfying. It wasn't the volume. It wasn't attitude. It was consequences. Ethan didn't stand there to worship power. He didn't stand there to say, "My family is above you." He stood there because Karen was acting like she was above everyone else. And sometimes, the only language a bully understands is a price tag. A moment where they realize, if I keep going, this isn't just uncomfortable. This is going to cost me. But here's the part people get twisted. The point is not that Maya needed someone important behind her to deserve respect. She deserved respect before Ethan ever opened his mouth. She deserved it when she walked in with tired eyes and a medical bag. She deserved it when she answered Karen politely the first time. She deserved it when she kept her voice steady, even while she was being singled out in front of strangers. Her worth didn't change. The room just finally stopped pretending it couldn't see it, because that's the ugly truth about spaces like that. Airports, ports, checkpoints, anywhere with a uniform and a line. Rules can protect people, rules can keep order, but rules can also become a mask. And if nobody questions the mask, the wrong person gets to hide behind it. That day, justice didn't show up because Maya was special. Justice showed up because the 4 pieces finally clicked into place. A symbol was taken, the medical device. A witness held the light, Daniel's camera. An authority stepped in, Mark's badge and procedure. And then finally, a consequence. And here's what I want you to take with you, because this matters in real life, not just in a story. Standing up isn't about winning an argument. Most of the time, standing up is about not losing yourself. Because when you swallow disrespect long enough, you don't just teach other people it's okay. You teach yourself you don't deserve better. So let me ask you something, and don't answer fast, answer honestly. If you were standing in that line, and you saw someone being targeted over and over, right in front of you, what kind of witness would you be? The kind who goes quiet because it's easier? Or the kind who speaks the right way, calm, clear, safe, so the truth can't be buried? Drop a comment and tell me. And if this story hits something in you, stay with me, because the next one might teach you exactly what to say when it's your turn to stand up.